Welcome to another episode of the Following Films podcast. In this episode, I sit down with the incredible Stephen Graham Jones, celebrated author and horror mastermind. I had him on the show to discuss his recent participation in the documentary series First Word on Horror. We'll unpack his unique perspective on the genre. I ask some highly specific questions about The Only Good Indians, and we chat about Wes Craven's iconic Scream, a film that redefined the slasher genre, along with some fun tangents including my possibly miscredited nod to the house from Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I mentioned that that's Mike Deluccas' house. I can't seem to find that anywhere, something I've believed for years, and when I was fact-checking myself after the episode, I have no idea where I came up with that. So, could be true, might be false, more than likely false, but something that I've believed for years. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation that's full of surprises and insights. And if you want to learn more about First Word on Horror, visit etchstudio.substack.com. Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. Hey, Stephen, how are you today?
I'm great, man. I'm great. My finger, this whole time I've been talking, doing these interviews, I'm playing with my new knife and I keep nicking my finger, man.
So are you somebody that fidgets like that? Because I have like
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I do the same thing where
Yeah.
I'm not good at it. I always wanted to be that guy that could flip a knife in his fingers, and I fuck it
hmm
up every time I try. So
Yeah. I can usually do it, but I don't come away without bleeding, you know? But yeah, I've got over here by my right side, I've got so many fidget toys. I'll cycle through them when I'm doing Zoom because I can't sit still, man.
you say that in the interview in this that the
Yeah.
stillness
Yeah.
equals death to you. So that's
Yeah.
something
I know.
that
Yeah.
you weren't kidding. That's
No, that's the way I am, man. I think it burns a lot of calories.
Um, okay, so I wanted to start out with a
Mhm.
hyper specific question, and I
Yeah.
apologize if it's that
Mhm.
specific,
Mhm.
with fear of coming across as like an SNL set, like William Shatner type question.
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah.
so in The Only Good Indians, and I promise there's a
hmm
point to this, you have a
hmm
line about Lewis in the very beginning where you say that he three stooges
hmm
the ladder
The
into the
ladder. Yeah.
backyard. And
Yeah.
so in my mind, when I'm picturing that, he's holding it straight up, or is it over the shoulder?
Oh, I thought it was over the shoulder because to me, I mean, there's visual slapstick you can do with either orientation, of course, but for me, trying to navigate the tight confines of this kitchen dining room, which is what you go through after the garage, to get to the sliding door, it's funnier if the ladder is over his shoulder because he can make a slight turn and the butt end of the ladder hits somebody's head, you know?
Perfect.
Yeah.
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 I was just picturing the visual of him walking back and forth and trying to keep himself balanced instead of
Oh
the.
yeah, yeah, that would work too.
And
You know, I wonder if maybe I didn't set it up because I know this house. This was a rental house I lived in at the time, and so I know that dining room has like a 8 foot ceiling, so you can't
sure,
carry a ladder
makes
both
sense.
ways. But I never said that. I never said that, man.
Well, I mean, you do say it's a 14-foot ladder, so I think there's a safe
Yeah,
assumption that it should be on the shoulder. But it's hard not to picture your own home, and I have vaulted ceilings in my home, so I'm picturing this
yeah,
in my own
yeah,
house. So,
yeah,
but
man. Yeah.
the point being, though, it's that
hmm
kind of detail that always is the
hmm
mark of good writing to me. Those
Oh,
things
thank
that
you,
really just projected in, and it's why I think you're a good storyteller,
thank you.
because there's a story you tell about your stepfather here,
hmm
where and the detail you open that story with is his desire to look like Rod Stewart. And it's something that is both charming and absurd at the same time. And it just
Thank
said
you.
it speaks like a relationship to the character because you think of wanting to look like Rod Stewart, but then if you live through that
Yeah,
time, you understand that was a
yeah,
legitimate person. But it's something
it
that is,
was.
yes,
You know, I wonder, I'd never had anybody say that. I wonder if that's something I picked up from how Alan Moore starts some of the interstitial pieces of
yeah.
Watchmen, you know, where Hollis Mason is talking about his dad's garage, you know, and everything. Because he says he asked a writer how to write a book, and they said start with the like most saddest, funny thing you can think of, you know?
Yeah, it's something that really just sets the stage because this story could be told multiple different ways
hmm
where the
hmm
events of that story you go from that to a guy that's I was a child of the 80s, so I
Hmm.
remember holding beers for people when I was driving around. You tell
Hmm.
that to somebody who's born in the year 2000, and
Oh no.
it's a story
Yeah.
of abuse now. And so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
back at it fondly, even though it is wildly irresponsible.
Oh
And
yeah.
then
Yeah.
to the pit
Yeah.
story, you could see that being a tragedy in somebody's eyes, but for you, this is like, no, no, this is the thing that unlocked who I am today.
It did. It subscribed me forever to the terror followed by the relief, you know? Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think that we all have our own version. Those of
Hmm.
us that have way too many horror novels and movies that
Hmm.
we dive into on a daily basis, there's a reason that some of us are just obsessed with those dark corners of life. And I think
Yeah.
that for me personally, it was a being scared of the world, being having
Hmm.
an incredibly sheltered life where I did not expose myself to things and
Hmm.
I did not have exposure to violence. And it was something that I was scared of
Hmm.
thunderstorms when I was a kid. It was just that kind
Yeah.
of absurdity. But then I
Yeah.
found ways to sort of get calluses and get braver and get tougher
Yeah.
as I went through
Yeah.
that.
You know, growing up in West Texas, like the whole culture that I grew up in there, anyways, and I guess maybe it's not that way anymore, or maybe it is, but I was scared of the world too, because when you grow up rural in oil and cotton country, then you know that anybody from the city is corrupt and evil, you know, and also you're scared of water, bodies of water, because we didn't have any bodies of water, so I didn't learn to swim till late. You know, there's all kinds of things you grow up terrified by just as a product of where you grew up, I
Mm.
think, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that in that way
Mhm.
because I was raised in rural Georgia. And
Yeah.
so there's certain elements there that I was just exposed to and used to, but there's
Hmm.
other things that you would see, when I moved to New Jersey, that when I was in like third grade, that was a much
Hmm.
scarier place to me than ever
Yeah.
in the backwoods of Georgia, which now that I
Yeah.
look back on it, I think I'd be more comfortable in New Jersey than the backwoods of
For
Georgia,
sure.
but
For
so
sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah.
So then I'm wondering, when you talk about your process, I'm actually
Hmm.
somebody that's fascinated by creative processing and watch a documentary or anybody that's a creative. And are
Uh-huh.
you comfortable talking about that? Is that
Yeah. Oh,
something?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah.
So then when you do a project like First Word on Horror,
Hmm.
and you're opening yourself up to that, to speak your words and to have them interpreted in front of you, what is that
Hmm.
process like for you? How does that feel for you to see sort of the visualization of the story that you're telling?
It's neat because we talked for like 2 days straight. I talked into a camera. I talked to Phil with that. They had
Hmm.
a device where somehow couldn't be seen. It was really complicated with mirrors. I don't completely understand it, but it was really amazing. And so it was neat to then watch the final product where they don't take things out of context. They don't like mischaracterize things I say or anything like that. But it's neat to see a narrative thread sort of pulled through these little pieces from different discussions, you know, and it makes me aware of things that I didn't even realize I was saying, which is pretty cool, you know.
Of course, sometimes you don't know what you wrote until you go back and
Mm-hmm.
read it later and you start picking up themes that you were clearly dealing with some shit you didn't even know you were dealing with at the time. It happens all
Exactly.
the time.
I've heard writers say somebody will ask them, "What do you think about this?" And they say, "I don't know. Let me go write about it and see." You know.
Well, yeah, it's the if you sit down to write a song or write a
Hmm.
book or write a screenplay and you're saying, I want to deal with this oppressive thing and this
Hmm.
idea and this theme, it probably is going to come out kind of
Yeah,
ham-fisted. But if you're
I
just
agree.
saying, I'm telling a story about this guy that I grew up with, and
Hmm.
all that stuff starts building its way into the background, I think that's the way that we like to
Yeah,
have our stories told to us.
I think it is too. That they don't really dance too close to being didactic or what's the
Yeah.
other word? There's another word like that. What is it? Anyways, polemic. That's the
There
word.
you
Yeah,
go.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so then
Yeah.
when you're taking on something like this and you're having
Hmm.
to read your own words aloud and do that and perform your own
Hmm.
words,
Hmm.
that's a totally different skill set than actually writing. Is that something
Yeah.
that you're comfortable with?
It is. Yeah, I've been doing it for what is this, 25? I've been doing it for 30 years, I guess. So
Right.
I'm quite used to reading into a mic or reading in front of a camera or whatever it is. I have learned over the years, like when I first got into the game of doing book events, they were really boring. You went to your 45-minute event and you read for 35 minutes and the audience sat there kind of just hypnotized, you know, and you were bored, they were bored, everybody was bored. So I learned really quickly to instead read little really short, punchy stories, and then I could engage with the audience a lot more between those stories. And that's what people are there for. They're there to talk to you. I mean, sometimes it is neat to hear the rhythm that a writer hears in their own words, I think.
Yes.
But too much of that can be numbing, I think.
Well, it's when I listen to you
Mm,
read, it's
hmm
something that I get the cadence in the back of my head, and I'm a really bad performer. Even when
hmm
I'm reading a book in my own head, I like to have
hmm
somebody else's voice in my head, and then I
hmm
can mimic it.
Yeah.
So going back
Yeah.
with your voice in my head is actually a very powerful experience. So,
Oh, thank you. That's
and
wonderful.
actually,
Thank you.
and it's something when my wife walked by and
Hmm
I was watching this and she just stopped because you were performing parts. She's like, "Who the hell is this?" I'm like, this
Wow.
this is the guy I've been trying to get you to read for a minute. You
Cool.
should
Well,
pick
well,
this
that's
up.
nice.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
which
Yeah.
well, which I mean, she's my wife is part Ute. And
hmm
so when she walks by and sees a book called, Only Good Indians, she looks at that and I have to explain the title.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
white dude from Georgia needs to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm clean with that one.
It cracks me up. So many people when they talk to me about the Lincoln Indians, they some for some reason I've never figured out why they misremember the title and they say the only dead Indians, and I just nod. I don't correct them, but it's funny, you know?
Well, it's that very. I mean, I was aware of that expression.
Yeah.
I mean, my
Yeah.
whole life, and then you
Yeah.
find out that like Ronald Reagan had that statue behind him in the Oval Office and all that
Yeah.
kind of shit. Like
Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
man!
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just it's I those kinds of stories though, and this one in particular, and
Mhm.
you're something like Final Girls or any of these things that you've written that
Mhm.
I have an affection for
Mhm.
people that can play around in that darker side because they do it a lot of times without cynicism. And they do it
Mm.
where they really are telling stories about characters that you could
Yeah.
remove the horror and you have stories worth telling. And I think all of your stories
Yeah.
are that.
Well, thank you. Well, I wonder if like I feel like the horror trajectory and the sentimental trajectory are just like it's like a ribbon with they're on opposite sides of each other, you know?
Yeah.
And so I really feel like if you have the horror impulse, you also have the sentimental impulse, you know, and you might try to dress up that horror impulse with blood on every wall and transgressiveness and all that stuff, but you never quite kill that sentimental pulse in the middle of it.
That's actually, I hadn't thought about it in that way, but
Hmm
you're absolutely right.
hmm
Everybody that I know that, anybody that's ever had a Fango subscription, these are people that are deeply sentimental and they're really trying
hmm
to hang on to the toys of childhood in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just I see Ghostface behind you, and you talk
Oh yeah.
about in
Yeah.
there that this is one that you saw this 7 days in a row when it
hmm
opened up in the theater.
hmm
What was it about that particular film that grabbed you, do you think?
You know, it made me realize all at once, like in a reverse cascade or something, that the homework I'd been doing for 12 years or whatever of renting three 99-cent slashers from Blockbuster or wherever on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights had been homework, and this was a test, and I could pass this test, you know, and because the way that Scream was interfacing with the world, and also the way that pop-up video at the same time, same moment was interfacing with the world, was the way that was my default setting for how I interface with the world. I look at things and I peel back the layers, like, oh, this comes from that, and this is in dialogue with that. It's intertextual in this way, and
Yeah,
it like all puzzles together, and I feel like I'm deeper in the world if I can see this lattice work of connections, you know?
absolutely. And is
hmm
that we're at the time when New
hmm
Nightmare came out? Was that
hmm
something that you appreciated, or is that something
Oh
that you
yeah,
went back and sort of? I feel like there's been a reevaluation of that one post
there
Scream.
has been. Yeah, initially people kind of pushed back, but no, I was there. I think I saw it. I probably saw it in the theater if I had enough money. I'm not sure I had enough money in '94 or '95, I guess. But if I did, I saw it really soon. However, I saw it, and yeah, it was to me like a narrative escalation. Like most of the sequels that you'd find in a franchise are like dramatic escalations, but this like it took the narrative up at least a level, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, people say it's a dry run for Scream for Wes Craven, and I don't know if I quite agree it's a dry run. It is him putting his toes into those waters, you know, for sure. And um, I thought it was amazing. It was a way to approach the story, the characters in what we now call a meta way, but it didn't we wouldn't have called it meta in 95. You know, I don't know. I would have called it like something that Philip K. Dick would have thought of in 95, you know?
Yeah, well, it was he made this thing autobiographical in a
Yeah.
sense where it was about him, and in a sense it was about the audience, and so it was
Yeah.
much more about pointing the camera back at the person watching it and asking the question, "Why are you here today? What made you
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
up all those years, and why did you show up again today?" Which is something that we were not
Yeah.
accustomed to at the time.
Not at all. And I love the way that he puts himself in that really austere, like Hollywood Hills house or whatever. It's not his house, you know, but
Is it
we,
Mike Deluccas' house? I think.
is it Mike DeLucas? Oh,
I
wow.
think I could be wrong about that, but I
Oh,
thought
that's
it was
cool.
Deluccas. So
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know that, but I always knew it wasn't his house, you know, because
yeah,
I knew someone who was his assistant back then, and they said told me that they would go to his actual house, and
it was not that. Well,
yeah, yeah,
I know we're over time at this point,
uh,
but I got to tell you, man, I really did love First Word on Horror. I loved all the
thank you,
different authors and the different points of view that come together, and I'm really glad you did it. And thank you for taking the time to do this today, man. I really appreciate it.
man. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for doing this, man.
You as well. Take care, man. Thank you so
Later.
much.
Years gone, and what do we have to show? Wasted time that I know, and fear's gone, and where did all of it go? And my pride, and my mind follows my pride. So what's wrong with fixing and plastering though? Oh nothing, not anymore. So sing your victory song, pretend that nothing is wrong, like you don't know. The bandits finally came off, the scars are left to show off. On with the show. Fading songs, let's not repeat the show. Spite, might, and I don't know. Left, wrong, rewind, give it a go. And my spite, and my might follows my pride. So what's wrong with fixing and plastering though? Oh nothing, not anymore. So sing your victory song, pretend that nothing is wrong, like you don't know. The bandits finally came off, no scars are left to show off. On with the show. So sing your victory song.